Hello, thank you for joining me in this brand new Mind Mastery video. Today I'm going to talk about the subject of the ego transcendence or the transcendent function and what does it mean when we transcend our ego. So to start with, ego is often associated with negative terms such as pride or feeling important, feeling entitled or superior to other people. But in reality, the function of the ego is quite an important one because it enables us to keep our personality coherent. So what it means is that our ego enables us to have the coherent perception of ourselves and the world around us. It is a composition of our beliefs, our values, our attitudes and opinions. So it keeps everything in this coherent structure so that we can make sense of our experience, so that we know where we came from and we know where we're going, right? And I would imagine that negative feelings in regards to ego, when we say that, oh, that person is full of the ego, regards to the fact that their ego structure is too rigid, so that they don't really allow anything from the outside, but they try to keep this coherent structure as much as they can, right? So as a result of that, when that individual perceives an attack on the ego, they will try to do anything they can in order to defend it, right? In order to defend that structure. And as a result of that, they might appear as being, for example, proud or arrogant or kind of acting with a superior attitude. So the same could be probably applied to when that ego structure is not secure enough. So it's very fragile. And a person is feeling insecure within themselves. They don't know if what they perceive is right. They don't know if their opinions are valid. And in such situation, again, because of the fragility of that structure, that ego structure, and lack of coherence or poor coherence, that individual might act with no confidence or just, acting defensively in relation to other people because that structure is not so firm, not so secure, not so coherent. So in my opinion, these are these two negative possibilities of when our ego isn't functioning as it should be. But in a general sense, we need our ego. It enables us to organize our experience, organize our perception so that it makes sense to us and we know what sort of actions we can take. But once in a while, just like with our computers, for example, we need an update. We need to move forward in life. We gain new experiences, we learn something new, and we need to move forward. So what do we do in that situation? If our ego structure is too rigid, we'll not be allowing new lessons into our lives because it threatens our ego. It threatens the existing structure. So we can't move towards the new experience. We can't move towards the new learning because it's a threat. And our ego will do anything in its power to keep this coherence because the moment it's threatened, it loses its power. And we are then being thrown into the sea of confusion and anxiety and insecurity because once the existing structure doesn't work, once we can't make sense of our experience, once we start questioning what we see, what we perceive, then how can we make sense of our experience? How can we move forward? How can we feel secure and safe within ourselves? So that's when the ego transcendence comes in. Ego transcendence is basically leaving the existing structure that we've built for ourselves. So leaving the current ego behind and moving forward and moving outside of it. Developing a new structure, developing a new perspective or new perception where we integrate the learnings that we have gathered throughout the different experiences into this new structure. But obviously, because this transcendence of the ego is about moving from the existing structure and perhaps, leaving our comfort zone, leaving what we feel comfortable with or safe with, it might provoke certain feelings and emotions that we're not comfortable with. Anxiety, shame, insecurity, anger, maybe frustration because we are being thrown into the unknown. So that's why I think it's quite important to before we decide to transcend our ego, before we decide to destroy it in a sense, we need to have a secure ego to begin with. So we need to have a strong and secure ego in order to transcend it, so that the ego can use itself to move forward. Because if we are fragile to begin with, if we are confused, if we are insecure, and then we embark on this journey of transcending our ego, even if it's unconscious journey, even if it's something that we didn't choose for ourselves, it's gonna be challenging because we don't have this inner security to begin with. Of course, we might say that, yeah, we're gonna embark on this journey of finding a new security, or finding confidence, finding safety within ourselves. But then what if it doesn't work? We're going to end up still being insecure and anxious, maybe even more so, because we don't have an existing structure to fall on. So I think the transcendence of the ego is about crossing these boundaries of comfort. But ideally, we want to start with the secure structure in the first place. So we develop a new structure first. We develop inner security, comfort, and we are firm and secure within ourselves, right? So we know what we see, we know what we've got, we know what we perceive, what we believe in, but then we are also flexible enough to kind of welcome new experiences in our lives, and allow some questioning for what we perceive in the first place, whether our beliefs are right, whether what we've been doing is right. So it's sort of like balancing on a line, because you can't be too firm where you don't allow new things in your life, when you don't allow new beliefs, or when you don't allow new questioning, because it threatens your ego, threatens your pride, and makes you feel insecure or anxious. But you can't really be kind of too sloppy either, where there is, not enough structure, when you are too confused or too anxious, too insecure, because you keep moving forward without developing this inner security. So it's somewhat balancing between this firmness in the structure and the chaos and lack of structure itself. Because if you go too much into either of the extreme, you don't allow yourself to move forward. If you don't build any structure at all, you're going to be in a constant state of flux, where when you struggle to make decisions, when you don't know who you are, when you don't know how you feel, when you don't know whether what you perceive is right at all, right? Even if we adopt this belief, this higher perspective belief that maybe nothing that we perceive is right, it's still possible to believe in something. It's still possible to have some constant in your life, to have some structure, to have some firmness and security in your life. Otherwise, how else can you make decisions? How else can you move forward? Lastly, I'm not sure if it's possible for us to choose the ego transcendence in the first place. I think it's a process that happens automatically, and we sort of get adjusted to it in the process. If we are too firm, our structure is too rigid, if we are too rigid in the first place, our unconscious will find a way for us to become more flexible, more adaptable, more loose, so that the structure itself becomes a bit more flexible. And then if we are too flexible, if we are too kind of sloppy, too chaotic, then again, if we allow it to work, if we allow our unconscious to work, we can then allow this process of integration and building a structure to kind of guide us forward, right? And I think, in my opinion, it's important to remain open to this process to this ego transcendence process. So kind of acknowledging that what we know now might not be everything, and what we perceive is not everything, that there's still more to learn to ourselves, to the life itself. And it's very easy to, criticize different opinions, different beliefs, anything that is contradictory to what we have, to what we are, and to what we believe in. But, the very fact of, for example, criticizing or neglecting or denying certain things in our experience is manifestation of this insecurity of the ego, because the ego wants to have this firmness and wants to know 100% with 100% certainty that it knows the truth, whereas the reality often shows something completely different. So in conclusion, I think the best we can do is to be open to this process and welcome it when it comes into our lives. So this is the time, these are the times where we feel like we're going through some transformations, or we integrate certain learnings, or it might even appear to us as a crisis, as something difficult, challenging to go through, because it's sort of like shedding a skin, right? So you have this existing structure, this ego structure, which feels confident, which feels secure, knows what it wants, where to go. But then the new data comes in, new learnings comes in, and you start to question who you really are and whether what you've been doing is right in the first place. So allowing this process and understanding that there's nothing wrong with that is a key step in, embracing this function of a transcendence, of a so-called transcendence, where we go beyond the existing structure, beyond our current ego, and build something new for ourselves. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're interested in private coaching, don't hesitate to send me a message. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.